constructive and lengthy. That's how Dominic LeBlanc's office is describing his meeting today with U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. LeBlanc is the minister in charge of Canada-U.S. trade, and he's trying to get bilateral relations back on track. Canada dropped some retaliatory tariffs on U.S. products on Friday, but it remains to be seen if that concession was rewarded. The CBC's Olivia Stefanovic has the latest for us from Ottawa.
Andrew, a Canadian source tells me that this meeting took place this morning in Lutnick's office in Washington, D.C., and the source describes the tone of the meeting as constructive and cordial. Now, the source also says that this meeting was scheduled for an hour, but it actually lasted much longer than that, more than 90 minutes, I'm told. And this meeting comes on the heels of this major announcement by the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, announcing that Canada will be lifting most of the retaliatory tariffs it has in place against American products that comply with the Canada-United States-Mexico agreement, also known as CUSMA, as of September 1st. So this is the first high-level meeting from a cabinet minister following that announcement to Washington, D.C. And LeBlanc did not come alone. He was, of course, joined in this meeting with Lutnick this morning with Canada's ambassador to the U.S., Kirsten Hillman. Two sources have confirmed that with CBC News. And we also understand from another source that members of the Prime Minister's inner circle are also in Washington, D.C. this week, including Marc-André Blanchard, who is the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff. Carney confirmed that during a press conference earlier in Latvia, as well as Michael Sabia, the Clerk of the Privy Council, also Cabinet Secretary, which just indicates for you how intensive these talks are becoming. And when the Prime Minister announced that he would be removing most of these retaliatory tariffs, he said part of the intention here, after receiving an assurance from U.S. President Donald Trump that this move would kickstart trade negotiations again, that they would intensify these discussions, especially leading up to the review of CUSMA, which is supposed to take place next year. But Carney also says that the focus of this particular visit by LeBlanc this week is to address the major sticking point that remains with the U.S., which is, of course, these sectoral tariffs that remain on Canadian cars, aluminum, and steel. Here's what Carney had to say about that earlier.
Aluminum, steel, autos, copper. They happen to have a specific on copper. And then, of course, lumber, softwood lumber, which has been an issue. So those are the areas where immediately we are focused on improving the outcome. In order to do that, we will have to look at other areas where we can have win-win cooperation, other areas. Now, so it's an isolation of the set of issues around those strategic sectors for the American. And all of this in the context, as you know, of an upcoming review on CUSMA.
So there's no word yet, Andrew, on whether these sectoral tariffs will be reduced or eliminated completely following this meeting that LeBlanc held this morning with Lutnick and, of course, Ambassador Hillman. But there is optimism there, at least from the Canadian side. And we've also heard some positive words from Trump himself, who said following Carney's announcement that he would be soon lifting these retaliatory tariffs on American products, that he found this a positive move from Canada. And he says he likes Carney and that he wants to do very good for Canada.
Okay, and yet, Olivia, we should mention the White House has not reversed its hardest hitting tariffs on Canada. So are there any signs of momentum?
And of course, Andrew, Canada still has its tariffs on, these American sectors as well. But even though other countries that have signed recent trade deals with the U.S., places like Japan or the UK, they still have sectoral tariffs in place, and they haven't been able to reduce those. Canadian officials are optimistic, and that's partly because of the fact that our industries are so intertwined with the U.S., especially when it comes to the automotive industry, for example, with parts moving across both sides of the border every day, multiple times. And even the American car industry, it's calling on for a revisit of this tariff policy by the Trump administration, because it's being hit hard with higher manufacturing costs. The supply chain is being deeply disrupted. So trade experts say that we should know pretty soon, in the coming weeks or so, about where all of this is headed now that intensive negotiations are starting. Have a listen.
You'll know within, I'd say 2 weeks about whether or not we're on a glide path to a deal or not. Certainly, there's always the option to reimpose tariffs, but the Prime Minister is betting that really the public will forgive him for removing these tariffs if he gets a good end result. And that's what he's trying to bank on at the present time. And so the retaliatory tariffs were never meant to punish. They were meant to send a signal that the U.S. will pay a cost if they don't act reasonably in trade with Canada.
So as it stands now, Andrew, the vast majority of Canadian goods are not subject to tariffs. But of course, some of these industries are still facing these punishing tariffs. And it is the hope of Canadian officials that these will be lifted completely in the coming months, at least.
The CBC's Olivia Stefanovic in Ottawa.